You're listening to Dead Air Podcast, part of SplatterPictures.net.
What's up, everybody? Wes, Dead Air Knife here with always
typical Lydia.
Today's show, we're going to be doing the 1982 slasher classic, maybe, The Forest. Daddy's coming. I am not daddy, but I will acknowledge that a daddy is coming.
A dad, you make it sound so dirty. I don't know why it just sounds so dirty. Maybe it's because it's a nice early Saturday morning. Yes, daddy is coming. Daddy is here. He's right behind you.
Oh, shit.
But you got to say it with an echoey voice. Maybe I should put some echo on your voice for that, because then everyone will know you're a ghost and dead. Well,
they're certainly not going to do anything else to indicate that they might be ghosts whatsoever. Whatsoever. You're going to have, don't you look at your phone. Don't you go to the bathroom. Don't you close your eyes for a second because you're kind of tired and you're just off work, because you are going to wonder why these children showed up out of nowhere. They are indeed dead. This is a West pick. We've been on this odyssey, Lydia, a journey into the recesses of my slasher collection. And when you get to a film like The Forest, I suggested it because you were looking for some criteria. Winter is over. It's warming up. We're looking towards spring and summer and the woods, and we were feeling woodsy. And what's more woodsy than the forest itself?
I think that if we hadn't already done the ritual, well, I would want to go there. If we hadn't already done some Friday the 13th, I would want to go there. The burning, even, I would want to go there. I want to go camp. I want to go to camp, not camp. Well, this is pretty campy, I will say. It is very campy. And I actually had pulled up on my phone a picture of Barney Rubble and Fred Flintstone with backpacks hiking through the forest. I was going to send it to you, but I thought maybe it's just too obtuse. You might not get it. But, I mean, if I wanted a movie, which I did, with some Barney Rubbles hiking through the forest, I got it in this. And this delivered on that to a T.
It really does. This was, gang, a blind buy for me. I had never seen it before. I had never heard of it. But, man, that cover, it called to me. And the art surrounding this film is gorgeous, and you really think that you're in for something pretty creepy. And I think one of the best things about all of these obscure horror titles getting plucked from the bargain bin and into our collective consciousness as horror fans, as the years roll on, nothing is left behind. What we're treated to is some great cover art for some not so great films. Tons of those releases for the shot on video genre. I can't remember if I think it's TerrorVision just released a 4K version of Nail Gun Massacre. And if you look at the cover title for that, it looks amazing. Gang, do not be fooled. Nail Gun Massacre is not a well-shot film. It doesn't look that cool. The slipcover is just as badass.
But it's called Nail Gun Massacre, Wes. How could you go wrong?
That's true. This is called The Forest, a title that is not helping it out, because not only are there video games called The Forest, there's also a more recent film called The Forest. We've been over this before with films that have generic titles that are hiding secret gems, like Nightmare, for example.
It's really tough to find everywhere as well. So if you're looking for, you don't want to buy it unless you really want this cover art. The theatrical poster for this is amazing. I wish that the artist for this would redo some stuff, or like an artist like this, that isn't AI would do a poster for Blood Rage, because that's that sort of gem that people want to find in the rough that was brought to everyone's attention not long ago through re-releasing, and it's fantastic. I love Blood Rage, and this is what you kind of hope for, right? But it doesn't live up to that. The posters do, though, very much so. But yeah, The Forest, if you are looking to see it and don't want to shell out for it, it's all over like free streaming places. But the best place really is the Internet Archive. And this was the exact same story for Stage Fright. It is that culturally important that they have a very good copy of it available on the Internet Archive forever, for all, for free.
That is genuinely surprising. I am thrilled, though. Now, gang, you might be able to discern that this isn't the greatest film that was ever made. But here's what I like about it, nay, love about it, is that it is as independent can get. Don Jones wrote, directed, and produced this film. He put up all of his own money. He made sure everyone got paid. The movie was not a success, and he lost his house because of it. Kind of famous little story if you're into independent horror films. So what we have on screen is the blood, sweat, and tears of a lot of amateurs just trying to get a movie done. Did they succeed in every avenue of making this film? No. And we will talk about it. But there's moments in this film which I think are genuinely good. They're effective and it's fun. And then there are parts that are just baffling. And I want to come to you guys. We both do. Lydia and I, more Lydia, made a declaration, and she said it on the internet. So we have to make sure that we're doing it, because you said it on YouTube, is that you wanted to double down and like really make sure that we're bringing the quality to the show. We're bringing the research. We have all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed. And the problem is I keep throwing poor Lydia these fucking movies that you can really have a hard time drumming up information about. We're not talking about Friday the 13th. Fuck, we're not even talking about Hell Night. We're talking about The Forest. So I said, I'm going to do my due diligence. I am going to watch this film twice this week, and I'm going to include the director commentary, the director-writer commentary, the guy who directed the shots that we're looking at and wrote the fucking script that these characters are repeating. Surely he has some insight into why certain decisions were made. He does not.
It sucks so bad because I was like, yes, good. Wes has answers. I have questions. Here we go.
I might have some answers. I don't know.
My questions are pretty surface level, but like you said, there isn't a lot of information out there about this movie, save a lot of reviews that reiterate how bad it is. And there are some people that, you know, if you want to see a movie that's so bad it's good, this is your ticket. But I've never really subscribed to that sort of thing because I don't want to spend my precious time watching something in case it's so bad it's good. I mean, it's just an awkward sort of way to position a film. Well, you're watching it for its merits or not. Like, you're not watching it to laugh at. I'm not putting this on as a popcorn pizza laugh fest. You know, I don't spend my time like that. So those are bad reviews, I'd say, period. And there are a lot of bad reviews for this film and people who felt tricked into seeing it. I mean, we will say, you know, we had that poster and, ooh, it sounded like it was for us. The first few minutes, ooh, I'm sold. I'm hoping, got high hopes here. But we aren't as angry, I don't think, as some people. It's not great, yeah, but there are some things. And when you say that there are some really good scenes in here, there are. And I have this unshakable feeling that those are good scenes by accident, purely by accident.
You're probably quite right about that. And you're right. We're not the type of show that kicks a guy when they're down. And I wouldn't even say, and heed my words well, dear listeners, this is not the worst slasher film I've ever seen. So this is not even in the top 5 worst slasher films I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's watchable. It's got watchable moments. And granted, I will admit, I watched it like a millennial with my phone in my hand, looking up things furiously, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, or just little things like, where was this filmed exactly in this park, and like, what year was this particular Mazda made, because it's weird looking, and like little stuff like that. And what some of these very no-name actors and actresses in some cases went on to do, which is nothing, and some to some amount of fame. So I don't typically watch movies like that at all. I sit down and I watch the film like you do, right? You watch the film, like you sit and you watch it, and you get involved, and you suspend your disbelief, and you're watching this play out like theater. But I didn't with this one. I did not give it that much of my attention, save for scenes that I did rewind once or twice.
I'll be interested to know what those scenes are, but fuck all that, Lydia. Fuck it all to hell. What is this movie even about anyways? I want to know.
This movie is a classic tale of a maniac in the woods, so you should never go into the forest alone. Or, well, you should bring a friend. You should never go in the forest with just 2 people. No, wait, you should actually arrange for other people to meet up with you later. Like be right behind you, like 5 minutes behind you. That'd be cool too. Or like later on in the evening. So never go in the woods with 2 people and then 2 people meeting you later on at night. But you're kind of there for a couple days, so it's not even just like going into the woods at night. I mean, because they survived the night for the most part. And I mean, okay, it's never going to the cave in the woods with the guy in it. I don't know, Wes.
Fuck, dude. I was watching you struggle.
I think that's a good one. Don't go in the cave in the woods with a guy in it. That's fucking fucked up shit. Really, that's your cue to get out of there.
This is a Don Jones affair, a guy who doesn't really consider this to be a slasher for a couple of key reasons. One, well, it's a maniac in the woods, Lydia, and as you probably know, not a lot of movies about maniacs in the woods. Maniacs tend to stick to the city, and so it doesn't really count. Secondly, slasher films never have languid death scenes. There's never a scene in a slasher film, in any of them, ever, where they linger on any of the kills. It's always fast kills and we're out of there. Sometimes they even just cut right away from it. So that's another reason why this isn't really a slasher. And also, the guy's not wearing a mask. So there's no slashers with guys not wearing a mask. So it's not really a slasher. I'm, of course, being facetious. All of these things are classic hallmarks of a slasher. The director, I'm just guessing, isn't very familiar with horror films, and that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes the most ingenious, inventive horror movies are created by people who don't, quote unquote, know the rules. Some of the most influential horror films of all time come from first-time horror directors that were just trying to tell a compelling story. In Don Jones' case, he had this idea, this notion. I want ghosts. I want ghosts and cannibals. And I'll give him this. I can't really think of a slasher film that has ghosts and cannibals going on at the same time.
Ghosts and cannibals. Although I would really like to see the Wrong Turn 13 that has ghosts and cannibals, because those are my favorite things. Ghosts of the Forest, that's sort of being done. Ghosts and cannibals. Maybe if the Darcy Coates book Hunted gets made into a film, we'll have a hint of ghosts and cannibals going on in there, or at least that's how it will appear for a portion of the film. I think that would be cool. But, I'd have to say that this director must have walked into his mother's living room while watching the television cut of Friday the 13th at a key scene and watched it for 5 whole minutes, or 6 at least. And that is the amount of horror films that this man had seen before writing, directing, creating The Forest.
I don't want to dog on this guy for 90 minutes. That's not our show. We're not those guys. I'm gonna talk about the things of this film that I like, that I think work, and we're going to constructively break down what I feel doesn't work. And I'm assuming you're going to do the same thing. The show ain't all about me, people. I'm only 50%.
I would like to talk about how stinky poo-poo some poo-poo stinky scenes are that are stinky poo-poo. And it's so bad. I feel so ripped off.
The strangest thing about this film can be summed up almost immediately from the opening shot. Here we are in broad daylight, not a cloud in the sky. It's not even overcast. And that is going to be a consistent problem throughout this film that I just can't get past. Now, lots of slasher movies have wonderful scenes and moments that take place during the day. You don't need to set your slasher at night in order to make those scenes effective. However, I definitely feel that in the case when this film did actually have shots at night and not day for night, which so many of the shots actually are, I thought that we were encroaching on something that is effectively moody. All of the free production of the woods, these beautiful 1,000-year-old trees in the Sequoia National Park in California. Why are we not utilizing this to its maximum capabilities?
Which I didn't understand either. Why shoot day for night when there's plenty of it going on around you every 12 hours? You don't need to do that. You seem to have run of the woods at this point, and it is that mood that gets broken time and time again, unfortunately, that they're edging on at some of these nighttime scenes. And the daytime scenes are effectively tense as well, accidentally from time to time. And it strikes me so much of like a Richard Lehman novel. And if you know me, you know I love Richard Lehman. He is the king of extreme schlock, B-grade horror novels. Very few of his books have been made into films because they simply can't. Like, they're sometimes a little too rough. The twist is a little too unbelievable. They're always very campy and they're always very rumpy. There's a lot more sex and rumping going on. Rutting and rumping. And by rumping, I mean just the fact that the women have giant rumps and everyone talks about their rumps and their rumps are in the forefront. And it's like if Seymour Butts had directed a horror film. That's really the amount of rumps. I mean, if you count the times the rumps are mentioned in a Richard Lehman novel, it's like 30 fucking times, where there's no like sexuality, really overt sexuality in this film whatsoever. It is very chaste, really, honestly. So I like enjoy that, but that aside, it is very much a Richard Lehman novel. So I really, really wish that it would have been handled as such. Like if this guy would have been able to read some Richard Lehman novels, maybe it would have given him a little more inspiration about how to sustain the moods that he's creating, especially with a few of these long shots and some of the kills that could be just quite grand if they would have sustained that level of tension.
Our opening sequence is with 2 hikers who are making their way into across the national park, and they're having a grand old time until one of them gets the sense that they are being stalked. There's something out there. Perhaps it's a bear, perhaps it's not. This prologue sequence is really well done. I just ragged on it being shot in the broad daylight, but here it's effectively tense. And the initial kill of one of the hikers, a giant shiny Bowie knife right to the gut, looks great. It looks painful. It's sufficiently graphic. And then the next shot where this woman is killed and we have this really striking sequence in which the blade passes across her eyes, and we can see the reflection of the blood of her husband's innards all over the blade, reflecting. It causes a metallic red glint across her face, and she gets killed, and she drops next to these flowers, and it's so lush, and you have blood everywhere, and it's great. It really is great. And in these opening couple of minutes, when you get these kills, you think to yourself, all right, this is going to be another Blood Rage. This is going to be another back pocket slasher film that we're going to be able to talk about, and you're going to get to feel really cool because I bet you no one's heard of this one. And we transition to the city, and it may as well be, aside from a few other key sequences, the rest of the film is just so fucking disappointing compared to how great this opening is. And I don't want to sound harsh, but it's just, we were cooking with gas here. I liked this opening prologue a lot.
Now, you had mentioned that was more than likely filmed after to make up for time.
Yes.
I guess they learned how to direct their actors, or how to write a scene by that point, or where to block and what to film and what photography to capture, because it is well done. The ADR is terrible, and almost all of this film is overdubbed because of background noise, I guess, and
Yes.
proper miking, because I mean, it's not filmed in Italy, so there's no real reason for it to be overdubbed, but I suppose they had some sound problems here and there.
It was the water was a huge problem, and just the wind and the nature around it was drowning everybody out. A little fun fact I learned from the commentary track.
See, I knew you would have answers, and I have got some questions. Questions like, where the hell did they find these people? Did these two hikers have names? They don't have names. They're just random hikers.
Jack is the guy's name. I can't remember the woman's name.
Yeah, because she's saying his name. Okay, yeah. But yeah, a really gorgeous scene that cuts straight to Richard Lehman territory. So I'm still hopeful, even by the time we meet our four hikers to be, are these couples. And it's a very typical setup, and I like that they're not 18 years old. They're adults.
None of the victims here are particularly young, with which I suppose perhaps technically the children, if you want to include that, although they're not murdered. So they're, technically speaking, they're not really victims. Try to guess how these children die. You'll have 1,000 years and you'll never know. When we are introduced to this cast of character, it's very much like a My Bloody Valentine. Everyone is older, they're established, they're working. I mean, the hiking couple at the beginning of the film is middle-aged easily. We are not dealing with teenagers, and this is not necessarily a bad thing. It can introduce a welcome bit of maturity, adult thinking, problem solving that can be introduced into a story, with also not having to worry about how these young people would have been isolated and why it would be this weird couples trip. But that doesn't mean that there's not a level of immaturity amongst these four people, who are married, by the way. This is not boyfriend and girlfriend. This is two sets of husbands and wives at a backyard dinner situation, and they are planning a camping trip. Now, this is where you get a sense that no one really has any camping experience. That's to the outset, because the men are convinced that these women can't make it on their own. They can't survive without their mighty men, who also, by the way, don't have a hell of a lot of camping experience. The commentary track kept calling them tenderfoots. That was their expression to indicate that none of them were well versed in camping. But by some wild stretch of the imagination, it is the bet or bargain or wager is, we're gonna get up to this campsite ourselves. And by the way, we're not going that far. It's not like they said we're going to scale the Himalayas.
It's no different than going to any of the campgrounds that we grew up around. There's all sorts of crown land and provincial parks and some fairly hard to get to campsites and some that involve portages and canoeing. And like you could spend 3 or 4 hours getting to some of the more secluded campgrounds that I've been to in my time on planet Earth. And they're about the same amount of distance or excursion that these girls are going to. It's not hard. It's not a feat. But then, speaking of feet, she's wearing high heels, Wes. One of them is wearing high heel boots. My mom had a pair of these really cool, kind of beige colored, chunky high heel boots that I thought they were the coolest. She wouldn't have fucking wore them camping. That's crazy. Like, why not up the difficulty level?
That's how hardcore she's going to be. She's going to tell you, I don't need any help, and I'm going to make this as painful and as uncomfortable as possible. It's more of a stretch. It's less of a stretch than in one of the more recent Blair Witch sequels, or the more recent Blair Witch sequel, where one of the teens that goes into the forest, she's wearing Converse. And the whole time I was watching that movie and I would see this girl's feet, I was like, she is hiking in the dense, horrible woods of Burkittsville in fucking Converse. Like you may as well be barefoot.
Yeah, it's paper thin. And I get the idea that these men are camping and hiking experts by virtue of them having penises alone.
Yes.
And the most camping that they've done is to take their respective girlfriends into the forest to bang them overnight and then come back, because it's basically a glorified hike at that point. They're hiking experts, and you don't need to be, because hiking involves walking in suitable footwear.
You're absolutely right. It's practically a drive-up location. The challenge for the wives seems to be, can you drive to this place? Can you get to the national park on your own in a car?
Are we going the right way? I think so. I hope you know where we're going. Well, I'm pretty sure. That's basically the conversation all the way there on the highway, the interstate, and then a very well-kept road that's nice and twisty-turny. And I think I found it on Google Maps. I have an idea that I found the landing that they go to, and it's a very nice drive. It's a very nice switchback mountain drive, like you'd expect. It's not hard. It's not fucking hard at all. The trails where they're going look fairly well kept, and there's one spot where you have to hop some rocks, sinkers and floaters style, across a little tiny river that it doesn't look dangerous at all, where you can fall in and still recover and be okay, because they proved that, which I think was an outtake when that girl falls in the water. But anyway, yeah, it's not difficult. They have hiked for all of 2 minutes, and they're already asking each other, like, oh my God, like, how much farther is it? The passage of time here, in 2 cases near the beginning of this film, are kind of confusingly shot to me, where we're led to believe they've been hiking for hours and they have hours yet to go, where the sun has not moved, and it is very obvious. There is no change in their demeanor other than them saying they're exhausted and have been hiking for a long time. There's nothing that sells me on the idea that they've been hiking for a long time. And that is compounded even more so by the fact that the guys who are supposed to meet them that night leave literally 2 seconds after the girls leave. You can still see the girls' car as they're jumping in the Mazda. And then they have some car trouble, which apparently takes 4 hours. Did you believe that took 4 hours, Wes?
It was something to do with their water heater, wasn't it? Like
the radiator. Yeah, back
right.
in the day, yeah, if the radiator was low on radiator fluid, you'd top it up with water. Distilled water.
Yeah, I didn't everyone's rocking their Mazdas and shit, so good for them. That Mazda gave them the cars, apparently. That's what they were doing. But yeah, it's like you see the women drive past their fucking their house, and then the guys get out of their car, like get out of the house, immediately. And it's like, what's the point of all of this? Is it just to prove that you can drive to the goddamn park? I don't understand. And then hike like an hour up the road and then get tired and give up. And then, well, this river seems good enough to set up camp. And like the guys will find us eventually, which they eventually will, but not before we are introduced to another character here, Lids. Because this isn't just about married people going up to the woods and trying to entertain themselves and have sex and go home. This is about fathers. This is about cannibal fathers. This is about ghost children and ghost wives. This is a horror movie, maybe a slasher, but mostly a chilling tale of ghosts and cannibals. We can't forget about John, our backwoods, bushwhacked. He's just a guy in jeans. He's really just a guy in jeans. He doesn't look like a guy. He doesn't look like a guy that has been living in the forest for God knows how long. Like, I'm thinking when you say somebody is living in the forest and is like a hermit and they're like a killer, I'm thinking of films like The Final Terror, where that person is like completely at one with the forest. They look like they are part of the forest come alive. Or
Yeah, you want Madman Mars.
Yes, Madman Mars, a movie I kept thinking about during this film because one of the actors who plays Charlie, John Battis, he looks remarkably like TP, to the point in which I was like, let me Google this because I think this might be the same actor. It's not. They just look similar. And also some of the musical stings really reminded me of Madman. Or Jason Voorhees. There's a guy that grew up in the woods, either as a boy turned to man or the ghost covered in a flesh golem, however you want to interpret that character. And he's like a big hulking bushwhacked guy who knows his way around the forest and shit like that. This just looks like some busted old man who, like, it looks like he's wearing a wig the whole time. It's weird. And he's got kind of a dirty trucker hat and kind of a dirty ripped shirt. It just all looks so impressionistic of an effective looking character. And it's not helping that not only does he not look scary whatsoever, he is not a big, intimidating man, or even a creepy looking man. He just looks like a fucking guy that looks very tired. Maybe because he's so bloated on all this human meat that he's constantly eating.
When he says, I'm so hungry, he's not. And you could tell, we were talking about this before we were recording. He does not sell. He doesn't sell, you're right, scary or creepy or so hungry he needs to eat the flesh of fellow human beings. He doesn't even strike you as someone who's so angry at humans, because there's like retaliation cannibalism, and he doesn't strike me as that either. He does seem to just kind of want to be left alone, but not to the point that he's going to eat people who trespass. He's in a national forest where hikers are regular. He's not that far from civilization, so people are normal. Yeah. And he's going to get visitors, like, period. He is just going to get visitors, especially because his ghost children are luring them there in a way. But, like, he doesn't sell it. And I think that he's as hungry as I am by 3 p.m. when I haven't had breakfast.
It's fucking hysterical to me. I can almost guarantee you that after the incident that brought him to the woods in the first place, he was out in that national park for 45 fucking minutes before he started killing and eating people. Like, he's like, I'm starving. I haven't eaten in days. Liar. You know how I know you're a liar? Because you just killed 2 people at the beginning of the movie. We saw that. That's 2 full-grown adults. So, and you don't have a refrigerator. So what did you eat them like a fucking snake? And then second of all, now he's going to attack and kill more hikers. Then he's going to attack and kill more hikers. And I was like, how much fucking human meat do you need to eat? It's outrageous to me that I'm supposed to believe that this guy, I mean, for fuck's sake, this national park, I bet you if you were quiet enough, you could hear the traffic from the goddamn highway. Like, he's not isolated. And lastly, there's wildlife everywhere. There is other things to eat.
Nonstop. There's animal noises. There are loons in the little waters. There are owls in the trees. There are partridges, and you can kill a partridge because they're real stupid by kicking a rock real hard. And they are that dumb. You can sneak up on a partridge because they can't see very well either. So like you can just grab the fucking things out of the trees if you're so sold on eating meat. If not, there's all sorts of things to forage. In this wonderful park, there's thousands of different types of mushrooms. And I'm sure, you know what? I don't really care at this point if he stumbles upon a poisonous one. That's fine. But he has a lot to eat. There's all sorts of reeds and shoots that you can eat the soft roots of. There's grasses you can eat. There's things growing off the trees. The very trees you're surrounded by drop all sorts of nuts and seeds and little shoots. Like right now, the maples have already given us sap, but now they're having what people will call maple broccoli. So it's like a maple flower that you can just eat. And there's all sorts of food in every forest. But yeah, no, maybe he's eating people like shark fin soup style. You know, he's like cutting off our cheeks and eating that, and that's it. Delicacies.
He's super wasteful. He's just like, oh, there's tons of the human body that you just can't eat because it's just too much gristle or it's gross or I don't like the look of it. I always think about people like in cannibal movies, like always having to like strip people naked and then like cut them all up. Like it's so much work to do all of this fucking cleaning that it would be involved. And I don't know.
It depends on how you do it. You know what I mean? Like you can eat a beaver tail by cutting the tail off the beaver and you just roast it over the fire until the skin peels off. And then what's inside is pretty much perfectly cooked, very nicely rendered meat because the fat melts into it while the skin's burning off. And that sounds awfully graphic, but I mean, you could go about it that way. I mean, if you don't really know much about culinary arts, you don't have any sage or paprika to help it along, and you don't have any stock handy to making a good soup, you don't have all those things. You don't have your good knife, so you're pretty much useless. You know, you can just throw a hunk of meat over fire and roast it, and it will taste pretty good, right? So, or you can go about the whole, let's draw and quarter this person, which does take a lot of time and expends a lot of work. And this is why in survival stories, you often see people like grabbing a squirrel and eating it while it's hot and raw, like, because they're so hungry, way hungrier than this guy. And they don't have the tools or the time to go about preparing meat. And he doesn't know, obviously, anything about keeping it for a long term. He's not burying it. He's not curing it. He's not drying it. He's not finding other things to go with it, you know. So I think he has been out there more than maybe 45 minutes, no longer than 45 hours.
He was a butcher by trade, by the way. So that is like he would know at least how to cut meat because, you know, as you know, being a butcher, it means you know how to also cut up humans because it's, you know, apples and apples.
I've heard a lot of true crime people talking about this, and it boils down to like the grandfather of all cold cases with the Jack the Ripper story, where people are like, "Oh, with surgical precision, these women were cut to pieces." That's my magistrate voice. It must have been a doctor. Yeah, it was surgical precision. You can have surgical precision when you're cutting a wing from a leg of chicken, right? You just know where the joint is. You just know. Like we've been looking at people all our lives. We have an idea what knees do. We know that if you put a knife in there, and you know, much like a chicken, if you never cut chicken before, it only takes you 1 or 2 cuts to figure out, oh, this spot is where my knife will go through. That's not surgical precision, although it could be mistaken for that.
That book, Cases That Still Haunt Us, that was written by that Mindhunter guy. I can't remember his name. But he had a very compelling section on Jack the Ripper, which, it's a butcher. It was a butcher. Yeah. They found a bloody butcher apron. It's like, it was probably
they had a number one suspect was an angry butcher that didn't like Jewish people.
Yeah. It was probably just a butcher. But it certainly is more interesting to say it was like a crown prince or something. Crown prince doctor, supervillain. But going back to this, we are going to see John's handiwork, so to speak. He manages to stalk and separate. I don't mean to keep laughing. He manages to stalk and separate these women effectively and corners one of them and, kills her. But it's kind of wild. They film it in an interesting way. I like the silhouettes. The only thing that I don't understand about it is the anatomy of the knife, if I could be so eloquent with my speech. It's that he keeps bringing the knife down in a downward stabbing motion. The first hit looks like it would be directly in the center of her head, and that would be the end of it. But it seems that he only gashes her on her side, and he brings down several thrusts onto her body, which also seems like they would be very slow, deliberate, fatally downward stabbing motions. But she's still not dead. She crawls away. They linger on it. It's a good, tense sequence. It's sad. And then he comes up behind her and slits her throat. The thing in this scene that made me laugh out loud was him reaching for her, saying he'll make it quick because he has to kill you because he's starving and he hasn't eaten in days. He could have asked her if she had a granola bar or something, but no, he's going to eat her. And when he reaches out, she in turn stabs him in the hand, and he cries out in pain, and he just fucking screams in her face, "What did you go and do that for?" Because you're trying to kill and eat her, sir. That's why she did that to you.
Yeah.
But fuck all that. He does get the drop on her. And then this leads to Sharon stumbling upon the fact that her friend, Teddy is her name. Teddy is the one that is killed, and they stumbles on her. He kind of looks at her, but eventually just carries the body off. And when he pursues Sharon, before he carries the body off, she escapes via waterfall. She did this stunt in real life. This was
really
She went over that falls into the water and over that falls. There was no one else to do it. This was such a small production, and the only bit of help that she had was there was a person apparently in the water below to make sure something didn't happen. I don't know what it was supposed to be, because this was a 35-foot drop. And she took it, and she did that by herself, which was really impressive. Ann Wilkinson was the actress's name.
Wow. Like the Daredevil's name, more like it, because I was trying to figure out if they had swapped off somebody, like a stunt person, or at least somebody that was used to doing this sort of stuff, that did the stunt, or if they had like a quick little dummy type thing to go over the falls, because it was kind of shadowed, and then pull it really quickly back under the falls as she swam out, as how I assumed that they had done it, because I could not picture just a random person doing the basic Niagara Falls barrel trick. That's impressive. That's foolhardy and dangerous.
She's lucky she wasn't killed. And because, gang, if you watch that sequence, it is not, she slid off the cliff into the falls. It's a tumble. It is a full-on ass over tea kettle, legs and arms going flying tumble. And just that alone, before she would even drop 35 feet and hit the water below, apparently the water was also fucking freezing.
Yikes. Yeah, not something I'd want to do. And it's the fear of those rocks down there. I guess that's what the spotter would be there for, to make sure she didn't crack her head open on rocks, because rocks are an intrinsic part of all waterfalls. That's how waterfalls are made, and what's at the bottom of all of them, basically.
But don't you worry, don't you fret, because our intrepid husbands, Lydia, they're going to save the day. They're not going to be able to save Teddy. She did die. But Sharon's still alive, and they don't even know anything's wrong. And they're going to stumble upon, in this rainstorm, they don't want to get wet because, they're tough guys and can't get wet in the rain, don't know where the fuck their wives are, but let's go take shelter in this cave. This cave is occupied, however.
Yeah, it's the cave of John, Madman John, super starving cannibal man. He is having a little feast, would you say?
He is. He's having a feast. He's already cooked, prepared, and is like eating Teddy, who we just saw get killed. But he's very quick at his. I mean, it looks just like a slab of beef, whatever it is. I don't know, but
a big piece of leg or something like that.
The funniest thing about it is you are far more goth than I'll ever hope to be, Lydia. How goth is John's cave?
What he needs, the pewter chalice to drink blood out of. That's missing, for one. I don't know what he would do for music. He could at least get some human bone wind chimes, because you need to add to this ambience. Other than that, it's fairly complete. He has his throne. He has a wooden wicker type rocking chair he has fashioned himself. He has a candelabra. So what else do you need?
The candelabra is wild to me. Absolutely fucking wild. It's like, did you find this? Did you bring this from home? Why did you, of all things, there is nothing else in this. There is a fire, there is a spit with meat cooking on it, there is that throne-like wicker chair, and there's the candelabra. And it implies a person, like one of the guys are like, or Charlie is like, I guess people are living here. It's like, living here? There's 2 pieces of garbage in this. Why would you assume that someone's living here? But it does.
Home, straight home. He needs a tapestry.
That would be nice.
A tapestry. Yeah, a door on the cave would help.
Yeah, this is some of the shots of this cave are Old Bronson Cave in California. Very famous location. They were using the less famous backside, not the Bat Cave side, the backside of Bronson Cave, to do some of these shots where people are sleeping in it. When they encounter John, they have what is the hallmark scene of Charlie eating his wife, because when you encounter a strange, dirty old man in a cave and he offers you something to eat, go ahead and eat that, no matter what it is. Don't ask what it is. And also Charlie is a chef. So, he's compelled to have this culinary experience, whatever this person is cooking. And he says, it's good. But then, Lydia, a mysterious force bays over him, and every fiber in his being recoils in horror to something that he can't quite figure out.
I don't know, man. If I had a big chunk of meat and someone fed it to me, or on my own volition I ate it, I wouldn't be able to tell, like, had I known that piece of meat before. I don't think that that's how it works. I mean, you could get some real magical thinking, crazy as hell cannibal killers to tell you that there is a force that you have within you that they can consume and commingle with or whatever. That is crazy talk. It is 100% crazy talk. I don't think that even your most together relationship could you discern that you have eaten a piece of your mate. I just do not buy it. I don't buy it. But I really think that crazy dude in the forest in a cave food is fairy rules. Like, you don't eat the fairies food, you don't eat leprechaun food, you don't eat crazy hermit in the cave in the forest food either. I thought everyone just knew this.
Well, it's a good tip for you to impart on our dear listeners. There's an aspect of this film that we have been glossing over, Lydia. Tantalizing part of this story is the inclusion of ghosts. These are coming in two forms. Well, three forms, but two sets, let's say.
Yeah.
We have a woman in a nightgown, a red nightgown. She is stalking the women before they encounter John. And then also Teddy and Sharon encounter two little blonde children. These people are dead. They are haunting and taunting. The only way that you would really know that they're dead, well, the mother, she has a wound on her head of sorts. It looks kind of just like she has a bit of, blood on her forehead. It's not really all that grievous. The kids, however, look fine, but they have echoey voices and they have a bit of an eerie presence, I suppose. It's easily the worst aspect of this film. It is not effective. It is not executed well. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And the more the story trudges on, the less sense it fucking makes.
This is the first scene that I rewound and watched again to see, is the introduction of these two kids when they're talking amongst themselves, sort of at the edge of the campfire, where you know that the girls could hear them, and then they start talking to the girls. And it's just very weird because it is just echoey voices. And it's like, why are these kids' voices echoing? Like, did I hear this right? And was there something wrong? Is this, like, are they supposed to be ghosts? Like, what the hell? So I had to rewind it and be like, yeah, it's just, they just have echoey voices. They don't really have much of a shimmer to them. They maybe have a little under eye makeup, but not really enough to look like they're dead. They don't look dead. And then I was hoping that they'd be like not dead and they'd just be like weird, pale, cannibalistic, night dwelling children of the woods. And maybe the kids that fuck with people, like in the Mr. Bollin special Bell Canyon story, the person who's at their campfire at night and they hear somebody that comes up to their campfire and asks if they know the way to Bell's Canyon. And then they walk away. And then they come back an hour later and ask, do you know the way to Bell's Canyon? And they're stalking this person, asking them from the edges of their campfire, do you know the way to Bell's Canyon? And I was hoping that they'd be kids just fucking with them like that. But no, they're ghosts. John and Jennifer, the son and daughter of John, our cannibal friend in the cave. And they just sort of haunt around the woods, warning, helping, if not luring, maybe all at once, other campers.
It's an aspect of the film that even when directly asked, the director, Don Jones, said, I don't know. He thought that it seemed interesting and no one had really ever done it before. But there was no thought process beyond that, because that was something that I was dying to know why this was included in the film. Now,
and why not try a little harder to make them look like ghosts? Like
that I'll chop up to money. Although, for God's sakes, you're in California. Go to a fucking costume store and get some makeup. White out their skin. Go more pronounced with the eyes. Get some eye caps. Fucking anything. Are you telling me that you couldn't scrum up $15 fucking to make these kids look dead, to convey that they're ghosts. You try to do it in ADR. It doesn't make any conceivable sense to me. And if I were to say that there's one thing about this film that is straight up cringy, it's when these kids are on scene and people are having, because on top of the fact that it's a baffling aspect of the story, the kids are not good actors. So and that might be ADR, might also be the problem. It's hard to line up their mouth movements, but it's just so fucking distracting. I hated it. There was at no point where I thought it was cool. It was always just bad. And I was annoyed that the director and writer of this production was just like, because people on the commentary,
I wanted answers,
right? Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
But we're going to get one big answer. Well, or at the very least, Charlie and Steve. And we're going to learn the tragic backstory of John. You see, Lydia, imagine you're a butcher and you come home in your butcher's apron, which looks like a lab coat. I thought he was a doctor. He's not a doctor. He is a butcher, according to the commentary track.
80s and 70s butchers. My dad had a friend that was an accomplished butcher, and he dressed very similarly. So, yeah.
He comes home to his wife, who is having a comically overt and unapologetic affair, something so hokey it could have been written for a daytime soap opera. She is just having sex with some plumber. Now, if you have a hard time remembering characters' names, don't worry. Old Carl has a name tag.
Yep. Carl, he was there to fix the refrigerator, actually. He corrects her even in bed because she's like, here, meet Carl. Like it's something that happens all the time. Like they are not naked in their marital bed.
There was a slasher I had just watched called Blood Moon, which has a very similar premise to it, in which there is a cuckold husband who has to endure a habitually cheating wife, and then that turns into a compulsion to murder other people while she still acts however she wants. It's effective in that movie. In this movie, it's this random scene, and just to make it fucking baffling, she has taken the liberty to lock her children in the bedroom closet where she is having sex with this strange man. And then the strange man also acts like it's not that big deal. And while the husband of the woman he was just having sex with is standing in the bedroom, and he is fully aware that her children were locked in a closet and just released, he just sort of gets up and scratches his nuts and like, well, I better go fix that refrigerator. Like the thing I'm here to do. What the fuck?
Yeah. I like her explanation of like, well, the kids like to play in there. Like it's no big deal. Like she's not sitting in bed naked with a strange man.
So here we have, Lydia, two things going on in this film that are objectively horrific and disturbing. We just saw a scene in which a man ate his fucking wife, his murdered wife. Unbeknownst to him, he like cut off a piece of her hot flesh and swallowed it. That is horrific. That is objectively monstrous. And if you were to describe that scene to anybody, I bet you they'd be thinking like bone tomahawk, or they'd be thinking like something really horrible. Secondarily, we just saw a woman having a salacious affair while locking her children, forcing them to listen to her infidelity, and the husband caught her at home, and none of it comes off with any drip of fucking tension.
No, and I don't think that they use any of their soundtrack effectively. And I'll take a second before we get to this really amazing chase sequence. to just mention the amazing soundtrack. I mean, I like a lot of the music in this. It's never ever used effectively. There's one song that's used a couple times called "Coming On Strong," which is not good. It is a terrible song, and I joke about it being the feel-good hit of the summer, but I'm joking about it. They have a very, very eerie song that sounds like Roy Orbison fronting Federale called "Dark Side of the Forest," and it is very much the warm side of the door kind of song. It's exactly that for this movie, but it's good and it's creepy and weird, and maybe not good like to the like Roy Orbison fronting Federale would be amazing, in every way, but this is like a B movie version of that. It's a very interesting song that I would like to have played at my funeral, but it's not used effectively ever in this film. And those two scenes, I don't think utilize any of the score. They don't play it up in any way, shape, or form. They don't utilize it for tension. That both scenes fall flat. And you're right. They are objectively the most horrific moments of this movie that are gone in the blink of an eye, not given any sort of tension building, no music, no real atmosphere. They're not really referred to. They're not set up or let down in any sort of climactic way. They're just kind of there. Did he have any input on the cannibalism, that scene of eating the meat? Did he say in the commentary what kind of meat it was?
I believe it was actually a slab of beef that they had dressed up to make it look like it could be something else. And when talking about the meat eating scene, there's both on the Blu-ray, there's a featurette and there's a commentary track. I watched them both because I really wanted to make sure that I had as much information, because if you try to look online for information about this film, it's very, very scarce. So he had said, in terms of the gut reaction to eating the meat and this sense of wrongness or terror that overcame this character, he said that he wanted to convey that it was this sort of natural force that a human would feel about eating a member of their own family. Like there would be some kind of subconscious knowledge that you were committing this heinous act, this sort of affront to nature, and it would cause every cell in his body to recoil once this foreign substance entered his body. And that was how he described it and what he was trying to convey with that particular scene.
It's weird that they didn't set it up, let it down, or build it up the way that you would want that. He relied entirely on the actor, and he did an okay job. Like he's one of the more like effective actors in this whole movie. Actually, the Fred Flintstone of the Barney Rubble Fred Flintstone duo, and I mean the soundtrack. They could have put some stings in there or something, because they have many to play with. The soundtrack, if you're interested, is on Bandcamp, and you said that they have a vinyl of this amazing soundtrack.
They do. It's a beautiful yellow pink vinyl. I believe it's TerraVision that has released it. It might be Waxwork, but I'm almost certain it's TerraVision, and it's a beautiful vinyl record if you guys are interested in picking that up. To me, the soundtrack just reads as like Chuck Mangione with like James Taylor mixed in there. That's what it kind of all reminds me of. I like a lot of it, but some of it is used, as you said, I agree completely, wildly inappropriate times. When John kills his wife for her indiscretion, it's a weird scene in which she seems kind of into it at first. Like it's almost like, yes, I have wronged you, and now you're coming to claim your woman. You're going to ravage me with a passion that we have lost years ago. Yes, grip my neck. Punish me, daddy. And all of a sudden, he just starts strangling her and slams her fucking head into a side table. A fear of mine that I've had since I was a child. I would lay in my parents' bed and they had these two side tables that had glass tops to them and the corners were really menacing. And if I laid on my side and I looked at the corner of their end tables, I would start getting this horrible intrusive thought of like, you're gonna fucking slam your eye into that. You're gonna slam your eye into that. And it would get to the point in which like my eyes would start to wig out and I would like close my eyes really, really tightly. And it happened every single time I looked at the corner of those end tables too closely. So this was a real fear of mine about getting injured on an end table.
I thought that your irrational fear would have been getting strangled by your husband, but this is exactly how I feel drinking out of a wine glass. That irrational fear that I'm going to bite off a chunk and chew it and swallow it. Like I'm an automaton.
Yeah. You know what?
Because you're laying in the bed and you're not going to smash your head into the corner. You know you're not.
I know.
But you can't help but physically reacting to it. Yeah.
I hated those glass end tables. Mom, I know you're listening. I hated those glass end tables. They just wigged me out as a kid. But
terrifying.
But he is not done yet, Lydia. He's got more murdering to do because the man who put his cock in his wife is still on the property fixing the refrigerator. That's where you put your food.
I had to rewind this scene because I found it was so great. He's chasing him around their property with various saw blades and knives and pitchforks. Pitchfork versus bicycle. What the fuck? And the camera doesn't help. Well, no, actually the camera helps a lot. This is like he could be anywhere you want to be. Carl goes running this way and all of a sudden John's in front of him with a fucking saw. And then he goes running the other way and all of a sudden John's in front of him with a pitchfork. So he grabs a bike and he's running the other way and all of a sudden there's a big circular saw. And the camera follows him around. So it really does appear that John is teleporting.
Yes.
Jason Voorhees style in front of him.
This aspect where John seems to be materializing out of thin air with a new rusty piece of farm equipment is absolutely hysterical. And the first thing I was thinking is, why is all this garbage on your property?
Yeah.
And
it's sort of edge of town, derelict junkyard of a yard. Who is the one abusing these children, John? Clarify to me.
It's like, oh, don't worry. It's my turn of the century rusted bicycle. I guess I'll try to fight you off with this shit. Carl doesn't last long, although he puts up more of a fight than anyone else does in the movie. And I kind of dug this aspect of what it would look like. This is kind of what I'm getting at when I'm like, John is not scary. He doesn't look scary. He is a small man. He is a small, I'm sorry to say this, dumpy looking man. He does not look like he has any strength whatsoever. He looks like a middle management insurance guy that hasn't shaved in a couple days. Like, I just don't. And Carl is like a big fucking dude. Do you remember that movie Hush? Maybe I've mentioned this recently before, but that movie Hush, where the killer in that movie is terrified of this girl's boyfriend because he's too big. And so he needs to like cook up a way to like get the drop on this guy so he can kill him. And when he finishes fighting him, he's like huffing and puffing and he's like, he's like, oh shit, you're big. Oh yeah, you're way too, holy fuck. This guy doesn't seem to be at a disadvantage at all. And if anything, Carl seems to be like this omnipotent warrior killer because yes, it looks like he's teleporting.
Yeah, the tools and derelict garbage in John's yard is more dangerous than John could ever be. Obviously, because that's why Carl dies. Which, it strikes me now, my father's name is John, and he definitely has a busted up bicycle or 2 or 4 in his yard, and many saw blades littering the premise. And one of our back sheds is actually decorated by giant saw blades, circular saw blades, and a very big one from a sawmill. So there's like a lot of like this exact saw blade that kills Carl We have one of those.
They were just in Calendar the whole time fighting. That's where John was getting all these weapons.
Seems to be. He could have been a neighbor of my dad. My dad would have thought he was a dumpy fellow, though, that had a weird mess of a yard, though, because my dad has some reason to this madness in his yard, and it's used as decoration. It's not just trash.
I think about your dad's saw collection a lot. That's hanging up on the barn. Weirdly, I was thinking about it recently, and I can't remember why, but I was thinking about that. This brings us to the present, where this brings us to the present. So we're meant to believe that this man killed his wife, killed Carl, and buried them in the yard, and then just wandered into a national park with a wicker chair and a candelabra, sat down, and just realized that he can't do groceries where he is, so he's just going to start eating people. Now, Lydia, the kids are dead. Do you know how they died?
Not entirely, in that they could have starved to death, refusing to eat human flesh. I've read that they committed suicide.
Maybe.
Maybe.
So
did the director have any input on what happened to the children? Because the father didn't kill them.
No, he didn't. The father may have been mad. See, the whole time, the director was very concerned with garnering sympathy for John. He wanted him to be sympathetic, a man who only kills when he needs to. And wasn't she an evil, vile woman? An evil, vile woman, Lydia, who cheated on her hard-working butcher husband, bringing home the bacon, literally and figuratively. Doesn't that make her worthy of getting brutally murdered? And she's kind of into it, and she's really witchy about it, and she locked the kids in the closet. Yes, I'm here to say, good for you, John. You kill those people. You have my sympathy. No, you don't. You're a monster and weird and not scary. But
well, this is why he's mostly haunted by his wife, who's wearing this big red cloak and lording over the forest like Maleficent.
Couldn't they have gotten a nicer fucking robe for her to wear where she looked scary? It looked so cheap. But anyway, the kids, they got sick and died, or maybe they committed suicide. I don't know. It just seemed to work for the script.
Yeah, the dark kind of shading under the boy's eyes, which might be natural, because this is Corky Pigeon. Real name, Corky Pigeon.
It's a good name.
Who went on to star as a sidekick in Silver Spoons. We'd see a lot of...
He was in Silver Spoons?
This little Corky Pigeon. Corky Pigeon. What a wonderful... Yes, he was the rich kid sidekick to Rick Schroeder.
Oh my God. Wow.
Isn't that fantastic?
Wow.
He's got this sort of under eye shadow, which made me think of poisoning, because they remind me of the little kids, the twins from Flowers in the Attic, who died by arsenic poisoning. And I thought, well, they could have easily stumbled upon some berries in the forest. Kids like eating berries, and they see some bird berries and they eat a whole bunch of those. A bunch of sumac, poison sumac. Those look yummy, and they kind of taste like rose hip or, vitamin C, a bit of a citrusy flavor, sort of, if not incredibly bitter. But when you're hungry, they could have eaten something in the forest. So I was waiting for that to be the reason.
Yeah, the director was just not clear. Although I like your explanation. I'm sure if you explained it to him the way that you just explained it to me, he would have said, "Oh yeah, that sounds good." But no, they're ghosts and they're here. Now, we still have a matter of Sharon, and we still got Steve. That's our Barney Rubble, not our Fred Flintstone, but Steve with a mustache. And we've got Charlie. Now, they get to the camp looking for Sharon and Teddy. They can't find them and immediately start panicking. So they naturally split up and they go their separate ways. Now, funnily enough, Steve is very confident at the beginning of this film. He's like, you women, you're not hikers. You'll never survive out there. There's too many animals and bears and rapists. There's all kinds of terrible things going on in the forest that you guys can't handle. He does give himself a compound fracture by falling in the water, and a bone is just sticking out of his leg. And now he is hobbled, Lydia. Charlie, on the other hand, is just sitting there with a bandana on his head, just sharpening his knife. And even though John, for whatever reason, let these two dudes not only share a meal with him, but stay the night, stay all the way until morning, sleep. They have a brief conversation about oh, this guy's kind of weird. Maybe we should take turns sleeping. And then they both fall asleep like babies, and they sleep through the entire night to the point in which John is the one that kicks them out. He's like, should you guys be getting out of here? And they're like, huh? Football practice. Like wiping drool from their mouths. And they're like, oh yeah. And they groggily.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. They groggily leave. He's hungry again, Lydia. It's been at least 2 hours since he ate an entire woman. So, so he needs to eat again. And I'm sure he made soup with her bones, but, so he is going after Charlie, and the aspect of John attacking Charlie and still going in this I don't want to do this, man. It's wild to me.
These are some interesting little sort of back and forth chase sequences, trying to find one another in the woods. I like that Sharon has been holed up under a rock. She's sort of done a decent survival tactic of finding shelter and waiting in one spot. She's the only person that's done anything really right so far. Mm-hmm. But this is where I really did begin to flake out. And I was more interested in where this forest was and where these trails were than what was actually going on, because we have long rambling conversations with the ghost children in between a whole bunch of this, and a whole lot of stumbling through the forest, which they can't be that far from one another. It kept striking me that they should be able to hear one another. Mm-hmm.
And unless we're led to believe that they are literally traversing off into opposite directions for miles. I'm going to walk in this direction, and 3.5 hours later of walking in the complete opposite direction, they say to themselves, I wonder if I've gone too far. It's not even really clear when they say that they're looking for Sharon and Teddy, what exactly they're looking for, where they're looking for. They did have a brief conversation with a fucking forest ranger at the very beginning when the men first arrived in the national park. At no point did they really try to get to a forest ranger, somebody who knows the lay of the land, because these people are completely out of their element. When Charlie eventually is killed and he has that brief realization that this guy killed his wife, I don't think he understands that he ate his wife, but maybe he does. It's not entirely clear to me. I've seen this movie 3 fucking times at this point, and not clear to me. But the maybe one of the listeners will be like, it's so fucking obvious, Wes. He obviously knows. I believe Charlie dies without knowing. And they kind of do this sad little, oh no, his little bandana is floating in the water. But fucking, he is cleaning and preparing this body immediately. He's like, I gotta eat. I gotta fucking eat again. And while he's cleaning and preparing this body of Charlie, who's strung him up, not a bad way to do it. You cut the throat, let all that blood drain out. Unless you don't have a chalice to put the blood in, you may as well just let it go. And And Sharon stumbles upon it and realizes that she saw Teddy get killed, and now she's seeing her husband also get killed. Her two best friends are just got murdered in front of her eyes. And she kind of gives up, for lack of a better term. She just sits down on a rock and is talking to the ghost children, and then seems genuinely surprised when a guy who was standing maybe 20 feet away from her came up behind her and is about to stab her in the neck. And the kids plead with their father. She doesn't want to die. And John has the retort of, they never do, which is, I think it's a really funny
That should have been the tagline.
She doesn't want to die. They never do. They convince John to move on for some reason. More or less, I guess, like taunting with the ghosts is making him lose his nerve. Maybe he's not as hungry as he thinks he is. Maybe he already has this full-grown man to eat. And like, no eating Sharon till you finish your Charlie. Like, it's that.
Or he doesn't want to kill in front of his kids, because he did have a real problem with his wife banging other dudes in front of them, even though they're in the closet where they like to play or whatever. But it's basically banging dudes in front of your children. He probably tried to spare them from that sort of thing. Perhaps that's part of it. But yeah, he is, we'll never know because he's crazy as hell, right? He's a crazy hermit cannibal in the woods.
When the children explain to Sharon that they are ghosts and, they got sick and committed suicide because they were depressed, or I don't know, whatever the reason for them dying, they're ghosts now. And they got to get her out of there. And where it seems like it's hard to tell at first if the ghost children are in cahoots, because it seems like they're luring people, but at the same time warning people, like, he's coming, go. But then they go to their father and be like, there's people in the woods if you want to eat them.
Yeah, and they seem sort of stoked. They're all like, yeah, our father's here, and looking at people like all creepily. He's right behind you. And they're not saying like run necessarily. They are saying he's behind you, but they are very aloof, much like the director seems to be. Did he have any input on whether the children are actively luring people or trying to protect people? Because it really should be one or the other.
Good question, Lydia. No. Seemed to work for the script is what I think he might say. Now, the children think that the best thing to do is to lead Sharon to Steve, her husband. Now, Steve is pretty injured. He has made himself, I was going to say a splint. No, he didn't. He just has a branch that he's kind of using as a crutch. And he is going to attempt to make his way to Teddy. They are reunited. When all of this comes to a head, Steve is going to fight John. Now, Lydia, we have seen John, Destroyer of Worlds, take down full-grown, fully armed to the teeth refrigerator repairmen and anyone else who seems to stumble across his path. This sad old man will not be denied. And Steve is hobbled. He's hurt. He's seriously hurt. Getting a fracture like that on your leg where the bone is literally sticking out. I mean, every movement is going to be agony, let alone if that is targeted. And it is. John goes for the kill and also like kicks the guy's already broken leg. And it's really, really vicious and mean. And Sharon herself is going to get in on this. Now, the actor who played John, Gary Kent, is probably one of the most notable actors in this entire thing because he was on TV and he did genre shit for years before doing this. They have an interview with him on the Blu-ray that's really funny because he said that his problem with this ending was that he got beaten by a girl. His exact words, by the way. But then he said that he rationalized it for the story because simultaneously this strobe effect is happening And it's like Sharon is being inhabited by his murdered wife. So it's like flashing between her and Sharon and his wife, and it's Sharon, and he's so staggered by this dramatic transformation. He's terrified of this ghost of this woman that he killed. That's why she was able to get the drop on him. Not because she was a girl, Lydia.
Which is so in line with this particular character. Now, this, from what I've understood, is who Brad Pitt's character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is fashioned after. This particular stuntman, actor in so many like schlocky kind of fight and western and dark, weird exploitation grindhouse films.
Mm-hmm.
That's who this Brad Pitt's character is modeled after, which makes a lot of sense that he would come back after years to explain the end of this, that he's cranky about it because she got the drop on him because she's a girl.
Right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And now that I think about it, maybe he had directed her with that stunt over the falls.
Is possible. Or apparently he Gary Kent was a lifelong friend of Don Jones, which is why he did this movie.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And yeah, one of the few interviews on this Blu-ray. It's a very bare bones release. It's not one of the boutique release Blu-ray DVD places. It's just an interview with him. It's like you got the director and you got him, and that's the only people that they got to come back to do anything with this film for. I believe some of the other actors are on a separate commentary track, but I was just going to watch the one with the director and writer because I thought this would have answers more than the actors tend to do. But I mean, maybe not. When John happens to pass, it seems as though whatever reason, and if you want the reason, Lydia, I hate to be this guy. The director was directly asked this, and he said, "I don't know." Why the ghosts haunting ceases just because John is killed? Why do the kids just be like, "Well, time to move on now"? No explanation given, even when directly asked.
It's like he didn't write it. That's what it strikes me as now with all these non-answers, because I would be like, were they figments of John's imagination? Were they manifest because John was imagining the ghosts of the children, and they probably had some other more sinister end at his hands? But yeah, I guess that there would be no answer to that anyhow, because it also proves that they do know how to do a dissolve cut, because the kids sort of fade into nothing. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why didn't they just dissolve the kids more often, make them look more ghost-like throughout the whole movie?
That would have helped.
Okay.
The mother shows up. The implication seems to be, and this was confirmed, that whereas the kids have moved on, this woman's ghost is permanently part of this national park. So
she didn't die there.
Yeah.
She did not die there. She died in town, miles away.
So I don't really know. We have this one anguished look of her looking at her now dead family sitting in that cave with the wicker chair and the candelabra. And again, you get this sense of, what are we trying to convey here? This woman was supposed to be like this mean. In this one scene where you had her cheating on her husband, you made her, like you said, Cruella de Vil. Like, you made her Maleficent. You were trying to make her like this evil bitch who is cheating on her husband and mocking him about it. And everyone just thinks it's a fucking joke and being cruel to their children. And then in that last moment, she gets her revenge on killing her monstrous cannibalistic husband, who is now, I guess, worse for killing and eating people. But then she has this pained, weepy look on her face as if, oh, the tragedy of my family, whom I loved so much. And now look at us, all of us dead. What? This doesn't make any fucking sense. You were a bitch. Like you cheated on your husband, you locked your children in the closet, and then you didn't think anything was wrong with it. Not only did you not anything was wrong with it, you were kind of proud of yourself. You were into it. So I don't understand what this last look of languid longing is supposed to be, but it just fell completely flat to me and make me scratching my head.
Yeah, same here. I thought the inclusion of the children's ghost I kind of liked. I liked it way more than you did, that's for sure. But her inclusion was bizarre to me. And I didn't like, anytime she was on the screen, I just felt let down by this entire movie. And not that it would have been improved by leaps and bounds with her exclusion. I saw absolutely no point for her at all. It wasn't even fun to suppose what they meant by having this red cloaked wife ghost.
I agree, because the narrative that they had created was supposed to be that this guy clearly loved his children. He didn't kill them. He like tenderly, lovingly, he seemed more mortified that she had locked his children in the closet than that she was cheating on him. And that seemed, the fact that she was abusing their children seemed to be the straw that really broke the camel's back, more so than anything. I think that he might have been like stunned humiliation, if not for the aspect of the kids. And then when he was done killing people and he embraced his children and it was, okay, well, it's just us now, and I'm going to take care of you. And then you can continue that narrative thread of the horrific things that the children had seen, which had caused their depression. That depression turned to an illness. That illness compounded everything. And both of them tragically took their own lives, or perhaps they died of their illness, not confirmed, but either or, it's an extremely sad situation. And now these children are permanently affixed to their father. I would buy a narrative of them being in his head because that makes canonical sense, if not for the fact that they were interacting with other people away from him, unless what would be a cool twist is if they revealed that the whole time we as the audience were seeing these people talking to these ghost children. Imagine if it was him talking as if he were these children. That would be interesting. A little bit of like Mrs. Voorhees killer, mommy killer type stuff. Like that would be really interesting if they went to go in that direction. So it's not as though that I think ghost children / cannibal dad is a bad concept and he shouldn't have done it. What I am lamenting is the execution pisses me off, because there's a good idea here, man. You just fucked it up.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I just read a book similar to, not similar in story to this at all, but similar to that feeling. And I had that same feeling through parts of this, watching this film and some of what we've been talking about here, where I had sat down thinking, you know what, if I can't write a good review for this book, I'm not going to review it, because I'm not going to slam it. I'm not going to sit here and talk about how everything was done bad and this is a bad book and you should feel bad for writing it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do that. And we've approached this the same way. We're not mean people.
No.
And we're not angry at that this exists or that we watched it. It's just disappointing because there were really good ideas buried under this. And I mean, it is interesting though, because you could say, take me to your B grade film that is like a bad film. Show me a bad indie horror film. And this is a good example of that. This is sort of like if somebody wanted to listen to bad metal and you're like, well, there's that band fronted by Rottweilers and that works. That's sort of what this is. This is the Rottweiler metal band parody on YouTube to Cannibal Corpse, where this is that to any other slasher in the forest.
So what do we got next for them, Lydia?
Well, coming up next, we are going from the California wilderness to Canadian wilderness, not too far from us, in a way, with Rituals. I've not seen Rituals, and I feel like I should have. I think it's the hobo with the shotgun of the 80s.
It is a film that I have wanted to bring to the show for a long time. It often is referred to as the Canadian Deliverance. It is an immaculately shot, fascinating, tense, survivalist story. And it is so criminally unknown that I've just always wanted to talk about it. And so, all right, the forest wasn't exactly everything we wanted it to be, but I stand by Rituals with my whole self.
I'm excited because I really want to see the counterpart to this. I want to see this sort of idea in the forest. I want to be in the forest in horror. Like, that's one thing that this movie did deliver on. And Canadian Deliverance, so to speak, I am absolutely here for it.
And on that note, I'm Wes Knipe.
And I'm Typical Lydia.
And you've been listening to Dead Air.